Before we begin, make sure you're subscribed to Strange History. Around here, we dig into the forgotten corners of wartime innovation, the secret, the strange, and the stuff that actually worked before vanishing into classified files or bureaucratic silence. During World War II, engineers, mechanics, and field soldiers constantly hacked the limits of military equipment. Not all of their inventions made it to the manuals. Some worked too well, breaking rules, upsetting command structures, or crossing moral lines. These were the tools that shouldn't have existed. Clever, improvised, sometimes dangerous, but always effective. And most of them were banned, destroyed, or buried under post-war secrecy. Here are 7 of the most remarkable field tools from World War II, ingenious devices that proved their worth, then disappeared. The trench flameless cooker, heat without flame or smoke. In the frozen forests of Europe, soldiers faced a basic problem: how to heat food without revealing their position. Open fires drew artillery, which was obviously a big no-no. Smokeless stoves, well, they were expensive and often unreliable. Enter the flameless chemical cooker, a small tin that used quicklime, or calcium oxide, and water to create heat through an exothermic reaction. You'd pour a small amount of water onto the quicklime, seal it, and within seconds, it reached boiling temperature. No fire, no light, no smoke. Pretty ingenious, right? Special forces and OSS agents used early versions in occupied territories, and field medics used them to sterilize tools on the move. It was a game changer for them, really. But, the device had a dark side. Overuse led to burns, and, moisture exposure could actually cause spontaneous ignition. By 1945, they were withdrawn from general use. Ironically, the same chemistry now powers modern MRE heaters, a wartime idea reborn decades later. The OSS sleeve gun, the real-life spy wrist pistol. Long before Hollywood turned spies into gadget-wielding heroes, the United States Office of Strategic Services developed a single-shot .22 caliber pistol designed to be worn up the forearm. Activated by pressing the hand against a target, it fired a single bullet from under a jacket sleeve, silent, point-blank, and honestly, just devastating in close quarters. It was designed for covert assassinations in occupied Europe, where carrying a visible weapon could mean execution. The so-called sleeve gun was produced in extremely small numbers, just a few prototypes, and tested by OSS field agents and British SOE operatives. Why was it banned? Well, it blurred the lines between soldier and assassin. After the war, the Geneva Conventions and post-war intelligence reforms made such weapons, politically radioactive. Every known example was confiscated or dismantled. Only 2 survive today in museums, both labeled simply as experimental. The German wind generator Charger, power from nothing. Deep behind enemy lines, German reconnaissance units needed power for radios but couldn't risk fuel-powered generators. Engineers in occupied France developed a brilliant alternative: folding micro-wind turbines mounted on vehicles or posts. These small generators powered radios, lamps, and even heaters using nothing but airflow. Some Luftwaffe units attached them to reconnaissance vehicles and aircraft to trickle-charge batteries mid-mission. They were so effective that Allied troops who found them after the war began experimenting with copies. But when the Cold War shifted focus toward nuclear and fossil fuel logistics, the lightweight field turbine vanished. It took until the 1980s for similar portable wind chargers to reappear in survival kits. World War II troops already had them, 40 years too early. The Soviet ice saw, the Arctic engineering miracle. The Eastern Front winters, turned everything, tanks, trucks, even horses, into frozen relics overnight. Soviet engineers actually came up with one of the simplest but, honestly, smartest tools of the war, the manual ice saw, which was a serrated steel blade mounted to these collapsible handles. This tool allowed soldiers to carve out massive blocks of ice for trenches, bunkers and cover, and also to open up frozen rivers for water access. The same saw was even used to dig in artillery positions or create ice armor walls that, surprisingly, absorbed bullets better than wood or sandbags. German forces called them ghost saws, silent, deadly, and invisible at night. They required no fuel, no noise, and no maintenance. After the war, Soviet military doctrine downplayed improvised survival tools in favor of mechanized engineering, and the ice saw quietly disappeared. But in Arctic expeditions today, nearly identical designs are still used by survivalists, unchanged since 1943. The U.S. grease gun kit, the ultimate field mechanic tool. Officially, it was just a lubrication pump for tanks and trucks, but among American mechanics and drivers, the World War II grease gun became the backbone of field maintenance. Soldiers modified them into multi-use hydraulic tools, part pressure washer, part pneumatic driver, part weapon cleaner. It could clean engines, unjam frozen parts, and even pressurize crude water filters. Some units built adapters that turned the grease gun into a low-pressure sprayer for fuel or oil fires, an improvised life-saving extinguisher. The military brass, however, wasn't exactly thrilled. Unauthorized modifications voided maintenance protocols and, honestly, created some serious liability risks. By 1946, all altered versions were banned and scrapped. The irony, that exact principle, modular hydraulic tools, actually became the foundation for modern field repair kits used by NATO forces today. The British fog torch, a light that wasn't a light. During night operations, British commandos used a bizarre device nicknamed the fog torch. It looked like a lantern, but it didn't produce visible light. Instead, it emitted a controlled beam of infrared, invisible to the naked eye but detectable with early IR scopes. It was used to guide friendly patrols, mark landing zones, and even signal aircraft during covert evacuations. This was 1942, decades before modern night vision. So why did it vanish? Because it worked too well. After the war, the British government classified the technology under radar secrecy laws. The prototypes were dismantled, and documentation disappeared into the Ministry of Supply archives. By the 1950s, the same concept re-emerged as the foundation for infrared targeting systems. The fog torch was, in essence, the world's first IR beacon, born in total secrecy, banned by bureaucracy. The Japanese field desiccator, drying without fire. In the humid jungles of the Pacific, keeping ammunition and rations dry was almost impossible. Japanese engineers developed a clever field tool, the desiccator box, a metal canister filled with calcium chloride pellets that absorbed moisture like a sponge. Soldiers placed it inside ammunition crates or ration tins to prevent rot, corrosion, and misfires. It worked so well that captured Allied units began copying it with their own improvised versions using powdered chalk or ash. But as shortages worsened, calcium chloride was redirected to explosives manufacturing, and the desiccator disappeared from production. After the war, the design resurfaced quietly, in the form of the modern silica gel pack found in every electronics box today. That's right, the "Do Not Eat" packet on your new headphones traces directly back to a Japanese World War II jungle invention. Each of these inventions, the flameless cooker, the fog torch, the wind charger, represents something rare in wartime field innovation born directly from necessity, not bureaucracy. These tools solved real problems using chemistry, mechanics, and pure fieldcraft. But war also thrives on control. Commanders distrusted improvisation, intelligence services feared leaks, and after 1945, entire categories of technology were locked down under secrecy acts or forgotten in the rush toward nuclear-era weaponry. The genius of these tools wasn't their complexity, it was their practicality. They didn't need power grids, supply lines, or permission. They were human-scale innovations, clever, portable, and effective. If you love uncovering history's buried genius, the inventions that worked but were too strange, too secret, or too smart to survive, make sure to subscribe to Strange History, because sometimes the best wartime technology isn't the one that made it to the museum. It's the one that got buried, classified, and quietly erased from history.